Welcome to Dwelling Disasters. It's been a couple of, probably like 2 months actually, and have a lot of changes have happened in the meantime. But we are back, and I'm here with insurance extraordinaire John Davidson.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, absolutely, you are the man. Whenever I have a question, John always has the answers. So let's try to find a question he doesn't have an answer to.
Yeah, there's probably some.
You tell us about your company, John.
Yeah. So I'm one of the owners at Tri-Mountain Corporation. We started the company back in 2014, so this is our 10-year anniversary. It's been awesome. We started with just two of us and a desk, and now we've got we're up to about 5 employees and growing, and it's been awesome. The DBJ recognized us in their top 25 a few years ago, so that
Sweet.
felt like a big hurdle. But you've been a big part of that, and we work with a lot of our commercial partners as well. And so, yeah, this is just fun. It's great to be able to help you and your clients, but also be a bigger part of the Denver metro community.
Yeah, I mean, you're always my go-to. You're always my first stop with all my buyers and sellers. They have a lot of weird issues too. So I have always appreciated you kind of getting into it and helping out. But thanks for coming on and teaching.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Agents and home buyers and sellers more about the market, I guess here. So
we'll see.
The first question I want to get into, the one of the rules of the podcast is if you come on the podcast, you have to tell a story. So what is the biggest nightmare you've encountered in the homeowner's insurance side, not the commercial side?
Yeah. There's like two different ones. They're different for different reasons. So most of the time a home policy, I don't know if everybody knows this, includes property coverage, which is like for your house. The other side is liability. So like if you're responsible for injuring somebody else or potentially their property. So one of the nightmare ones, I just felt so bad for this couple. They bought a lovely home. They're in kind of the, middle of Denver, we'll just call it that. And it's a historic home. They moved in. First year was great. Second year, I get a call. Hey, John, I know it's like just before the holidays and everything kind of, shuts down for either Thanksgiving or Christmas. And we're about to go out of town, but our entire floor is wet. And this is on like the second floor of a house, right? And so I'm like, oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that. Let's see what we can do. And I'm talking to him on the phone and I'm like, well, why don't you try to like see where the water is coming from, which, most homeowners often will do themselves. And so he starts trying to pull things out and figuring it out. And it turns out on the second floor, this is like his daughter's playroom, in the back wall, there's a small hole. And so it had been raining and raining and raining. We get storms sometimes, and this water had just been coming in and then sitting under the carpet. And because him and his wife aren't in there all the time, they didn't think anything about it. They didn't know it was there. And so it had been sitting there for weeks and weeks and weeks. So, you start to pull things out and he's like picking up the carpet and he's just like, oh my God, there's mold everywhere. Right. So they start to try to figure out, is this something insurance will cover? Right. And so the dialogue is this something that is wear and tear, like something you may have known about, or is it like a sudden disaster? Because usually as you read the insurance policy, you always have to read the policy, like what's covered, what's not covered. And so, had he known about it and been able to deal with it, it obviously wouldn't have gotten to this scale. Mm-hmm. And with water, there's a lot of times exclusions for like flooding or mold. And so I was like, hey man, first thing you need to do is just like get it dried out. Call restoration. You have to, like, let's say there's a tornado that comes through and rips the roof off your house. Like the first thing you got to do is deal with that. Like the insurance company is not going to show up for like a day or two. So like get a tarp, fix it. Right. So the first thing I was like, well, go buy some fans. I'll give you some fans that I've got. Get a restoration company and they start working on it, because the insurance is always going to help you recover that loss.
Yeah.
But then as they're doing this, like they get into the project and they're working with the insurance company. the wife walks into the home and there's this bubble on the other side of the home in the drywall from the second floor.
Okay.
They had a contractor the year before redo the bathroom on the second floor.
Uh-huh.
The shower pan did not line up with the drain.
Oh.
And they didn't seal it correctly.
Oh.
So water, you take a quick shower,
Yep.
it just kind of sits up there and leaks out slowly. And a lot of times in Colorado, it's a dry state. Again, it's just kind of like sitting there, and a lot of times it'll evaporate. But over time, mold, water expands, and it just gets worse and worse. And so it just falls right into the living room. And so now they've got
and completely unrelated. So
unrelated.
It wasn't
No.
like the water was also finding its way over.
No, completely unrelated.
Okay.
One was a hole in the wall,
Yeah.
a very small hole, but it just because of the way the water came down the side of the house, it was coming in. And then the other thing was completely unrelated. And I just felt so bad for them. They're the nicest people, and like totally unexpected. And so then we're going back and forth again. Like, is this insurance claim? Is this a claim against the contractor? And a lot of people don't know. If you have more than 2 claims on your homeowners in 5 years, a lot of times you'll either get canceled or non-renewed. And then it's really hard to find insurance.
Yeah.
And so you're also dealing with those dynamics. Like,
Does that go away? Is it like after like a year or two?
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah, so a claim stays on your history, so to speak, for 5 years. Now, one might fall off, but again, it's a 5-year period. So if you have more than 2 claims, it can get really tough to find insurance. So I felt bad for them. Those are not like the most graphic. Like if you want those types of stories, it's like talking to like an ER doctor or a claims adjuster. They talk about like the houses that explode or things where people get decapitated on fire escapes, things like that. I've never had to deal with one of those. Just more of just like nightmare scenarios for homeowners because, we all have savings, but who wants to fight and deal with all that?
What would have? Is there a product or something else they could have done on their policy that would have saved them from that?
Yeah. So they were able to recover the shower one because that was like sudden and accidental. And most insurance will put like a cap for mold of like $10,000. But with the way the weather is changing, we're often encouraging clients to add like hidden water damage coverage or definitely sump pump and sewer backup coverage. I think that's probably the grossest claim I ever had. Someone was like a week away from selling their home and they had a hailstorm and like the entire sewer system flooded and exploded, like not just like trickling up. Like,
yeah. like
cherry bomb in the toilet.
Right.
And all over the basement. Yeah. And of course they're supposed to move out in 3 days.
Yeah. Especially when it doesn't necessarily explode, but when it happens like kind of in that slow fashion in the basement because it just like comes up that floor drain and sometimes that floor drain is covered by a carpet or something like that. So you're just kind of hanging out and like my daughter came over and she was like,
"What's that smell?"
It's like, "Hey Dad, the shower's full of water in the basement." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Did you plug it or something?" She's like, "No, I haven't taken a shower." And I'm like, "Okay." I go down there and sure enough, there's like 2 or 3 inches of water sitting in the shower.
It's not clean water.
It's not clean water. And then I go and look in the storage room, which is where the drain is. Yeah, and it's got workout tiles on it.
Oh yeah.
And I can see water like seeping up through the cracks of the tiles. I'm like, oh no. Luckily, it didn't hit any carpet. It didn't hit. It was all just that workout tile, which is rubber. So
right.
we
Just get it up, dry it out,
clean it up, dry it off, and then like nobody turn on a faucet. Don't do anything. And
no water's going. Turn off the water.
Yeah, and then got the plumber guys out there to clean it out. All turned out fine. There wasn't an issue with the sewer. It was just a regular blockage, so it was fine. So,
that's good.
But it was like, had we, if no one had been in the basement, who knows what would have happened if I just kept.
A lot of us go to work.
Just could have kept
school, whatever.
running the faucets, taking showers, stuff like that. Yeah. So we've had big changes in the market.
Yeah.
What do you think is driving the changes? Or what changes do you see, and what do you think is driving that?
Man, I feel bad for our clients who call because we're seeing rates on homeowners go up sometimes between 30, 50. I had one that was 100% premium increase.
Year over year.
Yeah, from 1 year to 1 year.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people say rates. What you have to be clear about is like your home appreciates in value every year. And so there may be a rate increase, but if the exposure also is increasing, you're getting kind of like a double hit. But what's happening is I was looking at statistics last night. When 2023 was the worst hail for the state ever, and we had one insurance company come in and meet with us, and they were talking about their loss ratio, which means like if I say like 100% combined ratio is like for every dollar that they receive, they're spending a dollar out in claims. And so you want to try to be a little below 100% or 1%. They were running 361%.
Wow.
Okay. Not even close.
Yeah.
And it was just, with the front range, we are just a magnet for hail, and we're all tightly packed. So like, even though Texas has more hail claims than Colorado, Colorado per capita is much worse. So everybody thinks when you think catastrophic states for property insurance, they think of like Florida, Texas, California. Colorado's number 2, and it's all hail.
Yeah. Is it Oklahoma or Florida is number 1?
It's actually Texas.
Oh, is it Texas?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Oklahoma and Colorado sometimes flip-flop, but in 2023 it was us.
Okay.
And so hail is just so it just can cluster in a certain area and just dominate on roofs. So we're seeing a lot of rate on that, and then wildfire is the other thing. So like, while hail is the number 1 frequency of claim, obviously it's not as bad as like the Marshall Fire that's just wiping out entire neighborhoods. Like, that's severity. So like, you have frequency and severity, then they both relate to claims. And so the market has just been bonkers, and I feel bad because people are asking us to quote, and I'm like, look, I've gone to 5, they're all insane pricing. The best thing you can do is take a higher deductible if you're worried about like your monthly payment to the insurance company, but then you're taking on a higher risk where you need to have savings to cover a claim.
Yeah, I talked to another agent a while ago that said that there's he's recommending more and more essentially doing like self-insurance, especially for roofs, that's like you have that deductible way higher, so that the claim is better, and then just like, hey, make sure you've got 15-20K set aside, because in the next 5 to 10 years you're probably going to have to do something about this.
I looked this up just because I knew this was going to come up. In 2023 we had 892 severe thunderstorm warnings by the National Weather Service. So that's like a storm that can produce at least a 1-inch size hail, and of those we had 151 storms in 2023 that actually produced 2-inch size hail. So think of like a lime.
Yeah.
So like, it's not just like 1 or 2 storms, like maybe in your area.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking the entire, eastern part of the state, the Front Range and into the plains. So yeah, it was pretty bad.
So I mean, that's one every 3 days essentially. Right? Yeah. I mean, so like 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah. And it's not always, like I said, it can be really nice in Lakewood and just terrible down in Parker and Brush. And that's kind of what happened a couple of times. But yeah, so the insurance companies are also getting smarter. So like when we moved from our last home, which you helped us with, you did a great job. Always use Sean, by the way. We moved into our new home a little on the further into like South Metro Denver. And, we went to a metal roof, and we're seeing metal and tile getting a lot better rating on your insurance rate. Because it's less likely to have damage or punch through with hail compared to shingles. So if you do have a hail claim, I'm telling my customers, like, upgrade what's on your roof, because that's going to help you even more than dealing with it again and again.
Even more than like, what about the IR tiles? The IR is impact resistant asphalt tiles.
That was a great solution 5 years ago.
Okay. And 2-inch hail.
2-inch hail's going right through that. We had baseball-sized hail down in Brush in 2023. Baseball is sometimes going through decking. Right. So, like, you better have something pretty strong on there. Like, if you drive around, and you know this better than I do, on, like, the South Metro area, Highlands Ranch, for example, they're almost all concrete tiles. Yeah, because that hail is just brutal.
I had a client, this was a long time ago now, it was probably 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And I had 2 deals closing within about 2 or 3 weeks of each other in the Arvada area.
Okay.
You probably don't remember this storm, maybe 2018, 2019. I don't remember exactly when. But one closed, and then like a week later, baseball size hail, brand new. When I say they just closed, it was a brand new house. So
new build.
a new build house, and siding, windows, roof, car, like all destroyed. And then one was closing like 2 days after the hailstorm. So hailstorm happens, we go over, and same thing, siding, windows, roof,
everything
destroyed.
Yeah.
Luckily on that one, we were able to get the seller to make a claim on their insurance, and so we just had
before.
Yeah, so the seller just had to pay the deductible for it. I don't remember what it was, $5,000, whatever. So the seller paid for the deductible for that right before we escrowed it, so that they would just make a claim later. But the other folks, literally, it was like they still hadn't unpacked yet, and they had to just move everything to the garage because the whole house was just like destroyed inside.
Totally. Yeah. There's parts in Texas where they've had to total houses. We talk about total your car, right? You remember your car was on the hailstorm and just got totaled. Houses.
Yeah.
Because just softball size hail is going right through the entire house.
Cow. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm just thinking about like what type of damage that have to be to I mean, in Texas, it's a little bit different too, though.
Sure.
Houses are cheaper there, so maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So weather changes, increase in weather patterns is the main.
Yeah, weather, and then the legislature is trying to help with this. We're seeing wildfire scores go up, and it's getting harder and harder to get insurance up in the mountains or in wildfire high score areas. You're even seeing it into like where like Golden is meeting the what is that called, like the foothills, right? Or even into Morrison and other places. So the state came out with what's called the FAIR plan. We were talking about this just before the show. I would encourage people to Google this. The Colorado legislature is responding to the needs in the marketplace, and homeowners being unable to find insurance. It's not going to be like the best solution, but it at least allows you to have insurance. And so it's kind of like the National Flood Insurance Program. This is going to be run by the state, but it allows you to have insurance. So they're going to cap it at $750,000 for the dwelling and contents at actual cash value. So like most homeowners insurance is at replacement cost value, and of course valued at the value of your home. So this is at least putting in a stopgap to help, but that's going to be rolling out in the summer of 2025. So this next year.
So the only places I've had this issue is in the mountains, so in like Conifer, Evergreen, where I've had this come up, and it hasn't been an issue that has stopped a sale, or at least, I mean, sometimes a buyer's pulled out of it, but we were able to find it eventually, but it was like had to go to there's all these weird online companies. There's like Lemonade and the General and all these like
Be
weird.
careful using those.
Yeah. But the like you go to State Farm and yada yada yada, and they're all saying no, and it's not even like let me run the numbers. It's just like give me the address. No. So you run into that, and so then the buyer comes back and they're, oh yeah, they found insurance through, I don't know, something Lloyd's of London or some random online company. I'm like, whatever. So that sounds good. But that's where we've run into it, I think, primarily. But you're saying that like we're probably seeing that in the Front Range in the next few years too.
In the Front Range, it's a little better. It really comes down to, do you have paid fire?
Yeah. Okay.
So like you get into some of the volunteer areas, especially around like Clear Creek or up into like parts of Evergreen, extended parts of Golden. You're starting to see fire scoring really bad. Woodland down in near Colorado Springs. It's very difficult to find some of that insurance. And so a lot of times those are called excess and surplus lines, those carriers that are not, Travelers, State Farm, Liberty Mutual. And so they get to dictate the terms of the policy and the price. And so they tend to be 30 to 40% higher, and then also provide less coverage. And that's how the insurance company can make it work, because the risk is so high.
Right.
Yeah.
And the so like I remember a couple years ago you had me go and measure the distance to the fire hydrant. I assume that's probably what you're talking about, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
And is there only one way in and out?
Right.
Yeah.
Part of that, what's been coming up, which I'd never had this happen before, but have had buyers and myself run into this, which is pre-existing conditions.
Oh, yeah.
So before it was basically like, listen, whatever, the insurance company doesn't care, just buy the house, and then you'll have a hailstorm, you replace the roof, no big deal. And now they're doing inspections and they're asking more questions about the condition of the house and making forced repairs, basically. Is that becoming pretty common?
Yeah, we've seen some of that. I guess I would tell people, like, if you're having that much trouble now, really think about it.
Right.
Because if you're going to have that much trouble on the front end, you're going to have that trouble every single year.
Yeah.
And so, we have some clients who basically just have to self-insure.
Yeah.
They can't have a loan. Now, with the Fair Plan, that might be a solution for them.
Okay.
But
it will meet
tough.
the loan requirements.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you're in like a mountain community, like we actually had a property in Aspen. It was in city limits, in paid fire, no insurance, couldn't get it. So, just pay attention to it, I guess. And then, hopefully the Fair Plan starts to provide some options.
So the with those pre-existing condition stuff, there's two like factors of this. There's the real estate side where I'm usually talking to clients. I'm like, it's not that we have to get that done. It's that you might be okay with the scenario, but
Sure.
What we also need to be aware of is when do you want to sell this house? Are you going to sell this house in the next 5 years? If that's the case, unless we're in a crazy busy market, you'll probably have a buyer that will want this done.
Fixed.
So either you need to get compensation to get this taken care of, or be aware that, hey, there's competition. You want this house. There's a $20,000 problem, like a roof. It's not going to get repaired. So you need to be prepared that when you go to sell the house, it's not going to be the same market, and the buyer's probably going to want this thing remedied. That's the real estate side of it. But more and more frequently, I'm warning folks that, hey, not only do we need to be concerned of the real estate side of it, you might be required to do this for different insurance reasons. Doesn't seem like they're doing that on the front end very much. Is that true? Like when the policy is written?
We're definitely seeing more inspections.
Okay. Before the close?
No. So insurance companies have the right in the first 30 days to cancel your policy.
Okay.
And so they try to get out and do inspections. And it used to be less frequent. Anything over $1 million, they're always going to inspect. The value of the home, not the real estate value.
Yeah.
So like if you had to rebuild the home, how much would it cost? So if the rebuilding cost is over $1 million, they're always going to inspect. Anything that's in the mountains are going to also inspect. And a lot of times before we can close or buy the insurance, we have to provide pictures of all four sides of the home. We have to show it on a plat map. We have to mark where, if there is a fire hydrant, a lot of times there's not. So then it's like, well, where can rescue find water? So sometimes there's creeks, streams, reservoirs, things like that they can use. But yeah, a lot of it is trying to figure out like, what do we have to cover? And insurance companies are saying no more and more.
Yeah. Is besides, so in the mountains, I know that tree proximity is a big deal, but besides,
it's becoming that in Denver.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They've, we've got 3 different insurance companies that are running satellites every month over, every city in America. And they're measuring how much tree coverage is over your home. It just really started in the last year. Okay. And so when you get renewals, it'll be like, there's 23% tree coverage. And so at some point they're like, you either have to cut down your trees or we're going to non-renew you.
Oh, right. I mean, I ran into that several times in the mountains, but besides, I guess trees and roof, is there anything else that you're seeing a lot of?
the big conversation happening between like the governor and the legislature, insurance companies, builders, is we don't have a state minimum building code related to fire score or fire building. And so there's some dialogue at the state level. It's like this, if you go up, and especially around the Marshall Fire, you can be like, hey, this home had a wooden fence. There's no home there. This home had a, those plastic wrought iron types of fences. That home stayed up. Okay. So there's like dialogue, like, is the trim need to be wood or does it need to be cement board? Mm-hmm. Is there a screen on the vents in the attic or is it just open?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, where can those sparks get in?
Yeah.
And so I serve on the enterprise board and there's a $2 fee that is on your home insurance policy to help give grants now. So that's starting to roll out next year. And it's so fascinating to hear and learn about all these things.
Yeah. Nice. So. Well, I just had I'm working with somebody in Denver right now, and in the neighborhood that they're looking in, there's not a lot of this anywhere else, but there's a ton of shakes on like siding in this neighborhood, and I'm just warning them. I'm like, you're probably fine right now because it's Denver. I'm like, but just be aware that any of these houses you're looking at with shakes, we might have a situation with this in the future. So just be aware. Like, I know it's pretty, but be aware that this is something that might come down. You might be required to replace this or pay exorbitant premiums.
Yeah, because like 10 years ago, that was the thing with shake roofs.
Yeah,
like wooden. Like our HOA you had to have certain types of roofs. Shake roof was one of them. Insurance came out. We're not insuring anything with a wooden roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Between hail and then wildfire. Like, that's just stupid. So,
and a lot of HOAs kind of, the way that they did that, it seemed like, is they just like, if you need to repair your shake roof by less than, 5 by 5, you can do that. But if it has to be repaired more than 5 by 5, you have to replace it. They just like stop letting you fix shake roofs, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that'll probably be the same on the siding. And like, I don't know. This is when I started in 2014, 2015 at Tri-Mountain. Mm-hmm. We still had builders putting on really thin siding.
Tab. Oh yeah.
Hail shreds that. Looks like a cheese grater.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nobody's using that anymore either.
Yeah. The other big change that we've had in Colorado, especially, is around condo buildings and HOAs.
Yeah.
So this doesn't really affect you as much on the homeowner side, but you probably do have some commercial policies, right, on the HOA. So a big thing that's happening is we hunky-dory going through a condo process. Everything's looking good. Condo declarations look good, et cetera, and then we get about a week or 2 weeks before closing, the lender calls and says, hey, we've got an issue. We just got the insurance policy back, and it's the coverage isn't high enough, or the deductible is too high, or something like that. And that's nothing we used to really check on from a real estate side. And now I'm almost doing the full loan stuff ahead of time because
you have to pay attention.
Yeah, because we used to get that. I mean, that was like kind of like a non-starter. There was just like a standard condo policy that they just got. Right. And in order to insurance rates went up so much that they all like slashed their insurance coverages in half, not realizing, I guess, that they weren't going to be able to sell a house if they did that unless they sold it in cash, essentially. Is that subsided, or is that ramping up? What are you seeing on the commercial side on that?
Yeah, condos are just a fascinating thing to themselves. We have some really harsh construction defect laws. I think in 2018 there was 6 condos built in the whole state. I'll have to fact check that which year it was, but I remember there was one year I met with Alec Garnett when he was the Speaker of the House. I asked him that question. I was like, how many do you think were built last year? He was like, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000. I was like, 6. He was like, oh my gosh. So like building new condos is just really hard to do in Colorado because the builder can get sued for so many years after. And then it's hard on the homeowner because the second you go into a lawsuit, you can't sell your condo.
Right.
So we've had people who are like just about to close and then they get hit with the lawsuit and they got to sit with it. On the insurance side, besides the litigation where the insurance carrier gets pulled in from the whole HOA. You're right. Like, especially if you're up in the mountains again, the deductibles are just so high. We're starting to see higher deductibles on homeowners. So like you'll see some carriers are moving to a mandatory 1%, 2% of the value of the home. So if you have a, $100,000 home, you're going to be paying, 1%, so $1,000.
Yeah.
But who has a $100,000 home in Colorado, right?
I mean, especially up in the mountains, they're more like 1 to 2 million.
Yeah, right.
So your deductibles like in the 10 to 20,000
which
range,
is about most of the price of a roof.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
especially
2% is
if it's a condo. I mean, if you've got a $2 million condo in Breckenridge or something, and your deductible is $20,000. I mean, that's all that can go wrong basically in the condo. So like, unless you've got $1 million worth of furniture that got destroyed or something like that, anything else that happened, as long as it's less than $20,000
out of pocket,
you're just self-insuring yourself.
But
basically.
what happens is because the condo association owns the building,
right? Yeah,
and so they're having like 5% wind and hail deductibles. So they're basically paying for their own roofs.
I don't remember what the number is, but all these condo buildings increase their deductibles, either forced or something like that, to a point where it was outside of the Fannie Freddie guidelines, and so
correct.
the condos are just uninsured, not uninsurable. They're insurable from a loan perspective, and so you just can't do a conventional FHA VA loan in those properties. So you have to go to a portfolio loan. Has that kind of quelled, you think, or is it just?
You can see my head. I'm already shaking.
Yeah,
yeah. It's very hard.
Yeah.
So from a risk standpoint, habitational commercial risk, HOAs, first of all, they're just difficult to insure because litigation, high value, especially in the mountains, cost of construction could be like $800 per square foot.
Right, yeah.
And then, the wildfire exposure and the hail, it's just really difficult. So I will say, if you're working with Sean or another realtor, which you won't do because Sean's the best, make sure you max out your assessment on your condo. So like there's a coverage you can add to your condo policy, because like if the HOA has a fire or a hail claim, they assess everybody for the damage. And so your condo policy, if it's a typical covered loss, wind, hail, fire, all are, max that out. I think most carriers let you go up to like $50,000 on your HOA or your condo policy. And so, do that. The minimum, or where they usually put it, is like $5,000. The difference in cost between that like $5,000 and $50,000 is like $20 a year. Totally worth it.
And that assessment coverage is cheap anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, because some of them they don't even have it on there, but it's like an extra just to add it.
Year.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. Yeah, I always tell people to make sure they talk to their insurance agent about adding that, but that does not cover special assessments like the parking lot needs to be repaved.
Correct.
Right?
It has
just
to be related
just loss.
to a covered cause of loss. So
right. Yeah.
Like if there's a fire in the building or a hail claim on the roof.
Yeah. And usually if it's something like a big maintenance thing, typically we've got some type of documentation about that. So we know, like, it's not like the HOA didn't know that the all of the fencing need to be replaced, or all the parking lots need to be repaved, or something like that, or the elevator need to be, the cable need to be replaced. Like, they usually know that stuff, so we can usually find that stuff and work with the seller on it. Yeah. But the roof and wind and hail, we can't usually know that. Yeah. So are we, with all the different changes so I guess you kind of already talked about it with the FAIR Act, you said we're heading more towards California, not towards Florida, in terms of how the state is going to run insurance. What's the difference between those two methods and policies?
So everybody talks about Florida because Florida has made the headlines with the most number of insurance companies like defaulting, being taken over by the attorney general, or leaving the state.
Yeah.
We're starting to see that in California as well. California is just such a big market, both geographically but population based. Like, it's really hard.
The need and like the weather in the south and the north. I mean, it's completely different too, right?
Sure.
So,
and you don't have like what you have in Florida with like it's typically a little more expensive in California.
Hmm.
There's a lot more coast, obviously, in Florida. The hurricane damage is just another level. I mean, earthquakes happen in California, but not at the frequency of like 12 hurricanes a year
Right.
like we're starting
Yeah.
to see in Florida. So Florida is having what is called First Citizens or Citizens, which is their fair plan. It's really starting to become almost like the only insurer. They're
Yeah.
over like 40% market share now, which
Yeah.
is not great. But then, other states have these fair types of plans. So like New York has a really good one. Massachusetts, it's well run. Again, it's a market of last resort. You really don't want that policy. You want to be with the carrier if you can, but if you need something, it's there. California has a fair plan. It's done pretty well, and it's held up pretty well. But yeah, with Colorado, it's a great opportunity for us to step into that and help homeowners, recognizing where the market is.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have to see. It's
Brand
really
new,
for
so,
us.
yeah.
Yeah, it's wildfire and hail.
Yeah.
You can kind of build around like breaks and things with wildfire. With hail, it's just better building.
Right. Different
Construction,
materials. Yeah.
yeah.
So with the we already talked about mounds a little bit. So one big thing I talk to homeowners about, and I usually talk to them one day too late, is they something comes up. They have a leak under their sink, or
Sure.
they've got they're in a condo and the upstairs neighbor had a tub overflow.
Oh, those are the worst.
And they immediately call the carrier.
Yeah.
And they say, "Hey, we've got this problem. Just want to let you know about it in case we need to
Make a claim."
yada. And they call me, and then I'm like, "Well, what's the problem?" Like, "Well, we had this like little leak under the sink." And I'm like, "How much would you say it costs to fix that?" And they're like, "Probably about $100." I'm like,
No.
why did you call the carrier?
Yeah. No, you
So
don't want that.
what would you recommend for homeowners, like how to handle issues that pop up at the house?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So this goes, if I can share a little story. One of our clients, they were buying a new home. And we are proactive. A lot of times people are buying insurance at the very tail end, just before close. I'm always like, look, before you make that purchase offer, at least let me do a claim report on it.
Yep.
So all insurance companies share claim history on personal lines, home, auto, things like that.
Is that the clue report?
Yeah. Comprehensive loss underwriting exchange, I think, is the breakout of the acronym or whatever. But that's because, people are shady sometimes, so they'll go to one insurance company and not the other.
Mm-hmm.
And, so they all share that information, so you can't really hide it. So they were going to make an offer on this home, and of course you have to do your disclosures as the seller, like these things all happen. And so I called my friend. I was like, hey, there is like a $30,000 water loss in the kitchen. This was like 10 years ago. And it's not in that disclosure list. Like, make sure your realtor asks about it. And in the home inspection, look for where that water was.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times it's the fridge.
Yeah.
The
water
little
line.
Yeah. And a lot of times these homes can be vacant for a period of time, either
Mhm.
whether being shown or getting under construction for work or whatever.
Those water lines behind the fridge are almost all plastic now,
Yeah.
but they used to be copper.
Right.
And if you like pushed it in the wrong way, it would just like crimp it and just
Yeah.
like have like a little teeny little pin drop.
Yeah. And if you have the rubber ones, like, check it every couple of years.
Yeah.
If you're back there sweeping, our friend like puts Vaseline on it just so that plastic doesn't like eventually deteriorate.
Yeah.
and crack. So definitely check the claim history before you
Mhm.
put an offer in. That can be really helpful. But then again, like you were saying, like, think about it, because if you're in the position of the seller, if you make a claim, it's on that history report.
Right.
And I'm going to see it. You're going to see it. If you're a good insurance agent, you're going to share it with their client. So a lot of times if it's something small that you can take care of yourself and it's not a big deal, just take care of it yourself.
Especially if it's something that's going to be like at or below, or even just like slightly above your deductible. If your deductible's $4,000 and it's going to cost $4,200,
Don't claim it.
Yeah, to repair.
It's bad finance.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It's like you're gonna save $200 and then they're gonna increase your policy.
Well, they're going to change your rate,
Yeah.
increase your rate, and typically for every loss you have over a 5-year period, the insurance company gets 3 times their money out.
Right.
So
okay.
like if you talked about $200, your rate's going to go up for the next 5 years. So they're going to at least make $600 back off that loss
Right.
to recover.
Yeah.
Because they penalize you, so you lose your claim-free discount and your rate goes up, so you get double hit. So
Yeah.
don't make anything that's close to the deductible. If you can pay out of pocket, do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But
it's
those
just,
water leaks can be bad. Like we
Yeah.
have a friend up in the Wheat Ridge area, and he thought it was like a couple $100, and then he gets someone out, and they're like, "This water's leaking for like a month. It's gonna be like $20,000."
My coworker and I, we just went and saw a possible fix and flip yesterday, and we walk into one of the bedrooms, and the walls opened up from the from behind the washer dryer, and the drain stack for the washer dryer is just like, I could when you walk into a house and it's got a water leak, you get the smell of plywood, the wet plywood has like a very distinct smell. So we walk in.
Formaldehyde.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Glue.
You're spelling death this way. So the
I always have my wife go in first because she has a better sniffer than I do. I can never smell anything.
But we walk in and I could smell it. We find where it is and it's just dripping. And we ask the not the homeowner, but the renter is there. I'm like, how long has this been happening? He's like, as long as I've been here. And so I was years of just like it's like a small drip happening there. I'm like, oh man, like this whole like quarter of the house is probably just riddled with mold over here. So we're running the numbers, and I'm like, this could be $100,000. I mean, just this, not flooring, paint, bubble, but just this. This is like $100,000. When we open that up, I'm sure it's just going to be running through that whole quarter of that house, and then we got to disclose it, and I'm like, this could be a nightmare.
You walked away, I think.
I mean,
You're still looking at it.
we're not at the price. Not so if the seller and the listing agent are willing to work with us, we might still do it, but like at the price that it's at currently, without that mold mitigation, subfloor repair, we'd be doing tight numbers.
Yeah.
With that $100,000 possibility out there, I'm like, we'd be upside down $50K.
Every crisis is an opportunity.
Right. So we're like, hey, here's the deal. This is a giant unknown. I'm like, either let us tear this whole thing apart, figure out what's going on,
because you're gonna have to do it anyway.
Right. Or give us $100K off the list price, so that we can work on it. And I'm sure anybody else that goes in, when they like, it wasn't like hidden, but like it wasn't easy to see necessarily.
Yeah.
So if someone else is like right, I'm sure other people were right without making a deal of it, but they'll definitely find it because it's pretty apparent once you kind of dig a little bit. An inspector will find it, but.
Yeah, I will say, like, I don't think people always realize, like, you buy your home as is. There's always that as is clause, and why it's important to work with a realtor and an inspector and other things, because inevitably there's going to be something wrong with every property.
Yeah.
And so just looking and thinking through that, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, to have someone help you.
Yep. So what type of, is there something that most homeowners are missing, you think, that from an insurance side that they should be buying?
You know, insurance is funny because you have innovation and you have recalculation. So like we're seeing the recalculation on like, hey, if you have a better roof shingle, like a tile, concrete, metal shingle, we'll give you a better price. But on the innovative side, we're seeing things like you can get buried utility line coverage. So like if your gas line breaks, your water line breaks, and your sewage line, that line out to the septic tank or the sewage breaks, they have to dig up your yard to get it out. And if it's after the meter on the gas or water, you got to pay for it. On the sewer line, it's always you. And so you can add that coverage very inexpensively. Hidden water damage, now that we're getting a lot more rain. Like I think, what do they call it? There's atmospheric rivers. Like there's one right now up in the Oregon, Washington area where it's just dumping like 20, 30 inches of rain.
Wow.
It's just nuts.
Yeah.
Right? So we've seen that. We've also seen those. We had 2 bomb cyclones. Remember that? Yeah, it's just like the pressure just drops and then it's cold.
Yep.
And then we have storms, right? So like you have both of those happen at the same time, like good luck.
Yeah.
So like it's just, New Mexico, if you've ever been down there when it floods, or Texas, like it's that flash flooding.
Yeah.
If you go to the zoo, it's like my kid's favorite thing. I try to push the button as I walk through and that wall of water hits and it splashes everywhere. We're getting a lot more of that moisture. Not like consistently, but when it happens, it's just too much. So even though we live in the highest state in the country, like water.
Yeah.
Right.
And are those coverages that you would do through a traditional broker like you, or is that you have to go to like a specialty?
Yeah, good question. A lot of those you can get from the insurance company. A broker can do it, whether they're captive like a State Farm, Allstate, or independent like we are, where we go to multiple carriers for you. A lot of them aren't that bad.
Yeah.
They're endorsements, but they are capped. So it's like $20,000 for this, or $25,000, $100,000. It's not like the whole value of your home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're there to help kind of cover most types of losses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one big thing that people don't think about very often is that, like you mentioned it a little bit earlier, floods are not covered. So any water that's coming from outside the house, from whatever, that typically isn't covered on your regular homeowner's insurance policy.
Yeah. Earth movement either. Earthquake.
Okay.
Yeah. Not that we have a lot of those here, but
and especially in Colorado, people don't think about like flooding in Colorado very often. But when it happens, and then you find out that your home isn't covered for catastrophic loss from a flood, from something, you think, well, if I'm not in the floodplain, like I don't need it. I don't need it. But adding it is actually relatively inexpensive if you're not in the floodplain.
Totally.
Is that
if you're in, they call it Plane X, so you're not in a floodplain. It's like $500-$600 a year.
Okay. So yeah, $40 a month ish, $50 a month. So is that, and you don't have to do, if it's not required, you don't have to do that through FEMA, correct?
Yeah, you can buy flood insurance through all kinds of things. So like, I know I can't speak to some of the captive carriers because we're not one of them, but like with Travelers, for example, you can add a limit. Safeco, you can add a limit either for flood or earthquake, earth movement. You can always go to FEMA. There's also other flood insurance companies. Hartford sells independent, or National Flood sells a private policy.
I had a lot of people do Lloyd's of London.
So Lloyd's is like in England, and they are an exchange. They're a little different than an insurance company, but they do a lot of insurance in the U.S. And so, yeah, you can go through them. They tend to do more like specialized high risk types of policies.
Is that something that you see relatively frequently, or is it like, hey, something to consider, but not, I wouldn't like, you don't have to do that, or is that like, it's probably a good idea?
Yeah, good question. I think you have to look at what is around you.
Yeah. And,
elevation maps are free. You go to FEMA, you can look them up. It's kind of just fun.
Yeah.
Because you can see where floodplains are. I have a few clients that are over by Cherry Creek Reservoir. I'm like, y'all, like, if that thing goes
right,
gallons, and billions of gallons of water, or you're right by, Cherry Creek, or I used to live in the University Park, Observatory Park area, and there's the Harvard Gulch, and I think is it next door, you'd see people be like, hey, there's water in my basement. It's like, yeah, you're right next to the ditch, man. Like, and then like where you live down in Roxborough area, if you get a really bad deluge, like just water, where's the water going to go? Yeah. So if you're at the bottom of the hill, you probably need flood insurance. But even if you're at the top and you've got a lot of land behind you that's steep, all that water goes, easiest path.
There's something there. It's just the topography, but there's a house about 4 or 5 houses down from me that they keep building this berm higher and higher and higher because every single rainstorm, water ends up in their basement. Yeah, and they don't know exactly because they don't see it. Like they can't. It's not like
it's underground.
It's not. Yeah, it's not like there's a river running to their house. It's just every single time there's a rainstorm, and because they're like, it's just this like slow gliding hill right to their house.
Oh man!
And so they've built this berm that kind of like pushes the water into the storm drain, I guess, instead.
Yeah.
And they said it's helped, but they're like, if it still really, really rains,
Yeah.
they still get it.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. They've had engineers and contractors and all kind of people come look at it, and they're like, I
would just sell the house.
That's funny enough. They are going to sell their house.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, let's chat. What questions did I not ask you, John? What do you think is really important for buyers and sellers that I did not talk to you about?
So 90% of home insurance claims are related to the property.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like hail, fire, my water heater exploded, my pipe froze and burst. Those are most claims.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't realize their home insurance includes this liability that goes beyond even the property sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so you can add things. Again, remember I said more than 90% of claims are property. Of the liability claims, which is probably about 5%, a lot of those liabilities where you've injured another party or damaged their property are dog bite claims. And so, thinking through that, we've had one claim, I felt so bad, where a dog was in an office environment. A child had come in. The owner had said, hey, my dog freaks out about kids. I'm going to put it in this, pen or whatever. Please don't let your dog come around.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to step out for a second. The parents were on their phone. They weren't paying attention. Toddler walks up to the dog because it's a dog.
A
right?
cute dog,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Dog freaks out, bites the kid on the head. Immediately has to go to emergency room.
Yeah.
All that happened at the workplace, but it was the home insurance that picked it up. And you can do things like libel and slander. You can pick up coverage for identity fraud. There's some liability protections that you can add that can really help you. You actually, some homeowners include bail bonds. Not that I want anybody to go to jail. There's some coverages for like tombstones. There's some really random things on there.
Yeah.
So, there is coverage for things. You just have to read your policy to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Interesting. Well, cool. Well, John, thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah, man.
Dwelling disasters, the real drama of real estate. We'll see you on the next one. But if you have questions about real estate, about insurance, Tri Mountain Corporation is an awesome resource.
Thanks,
Please
man.
go check them out.
Yeah.
Do you have a email address or something you want to?
Sure. Yeah, our website, Tri Mountain, so like TRI Mountain, like the big stone things up there. Corp as in corporation.com. So trimountaincorp.com. We've got a great team. Happy to help. If you know Sean, you can also just have him rip my email and send it to you. So
Sweet.
yeah.
Thanks, man.
brother. Good to see you.
Until next time.
Yeah.